What's going on, guys? Welcome to In the Zone. I'm your host, Garrison Roy, and today we're going to go on a little bit of a rant and kind of more of a response to a Q&A that I had recently on Instagram too. So I want you guys to stay tuned to that. I'm thinking about maybe opening up a live episode here pretty soon. I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of build up for that, get some Q&As rolling, but wanted to have that going on at the same time as an episode, see if we can actually get some cool traction with that. Um, but stay tuned for that. With this one, obviously, we're going to go on discussing some hot topics and, just kind of answering some questions that I had going on throughout there. And also, please feel free to engage in the other episodes, like the full length conversations or interviews that we have with athletes, coaches, and other experts in the industry. And also the mental minutes, those quick mental game hacks to help elevate your performance, and some of those deep dive educational explorations where we just get really into it and finding out how to help you stay in the zone. But right before we do that, I do want to mention, hey, if you guys do want to drop any suggestions or maybe even questions if you don't get them on any of the other social platforms, drop down to that text message button right below on whatever platform you're watching this at. That'll go directly to the Buzzsprout feed where I'll get that. So it's not directly my number, but I do see those on that platform. So wanted you guys to be aware of that as we get into it. But for this one, I wanted to kind of touch on a question that I got via Instagram where it was like, hey, I'm just now gained X amount of pounds. I feel like I'm kind of coming at a stopping point. What do I do next? Or what do I need to do different? And led me to ask more questions, of course. Need to find out, okay, cool, awesome. Was this 15 pounds of fat or muscle? And knowing this athlete already, I was like, hey, looks like you're trying to gain more muscle mass and trying to pack on more pounds there. So naturally, I was like, hey, what are your macros? And he was like, I don't know. And so I'm like, okay, well, I think step one would probably be find out what that is, even though you might have novice gains getting 15 pounds added on just from purely eating more, maybe getting a little bit more into Mr. T, right? The testosterone starting to roll in into your body a little bit more, and you're growing, you're maturing, right? You're going through those puberty stages, especially with young athletes. It's really easy to do. But obviously, when you're trying to pack on weight, you want to be in a caloric surplus, right? Vice versa for when you're trying to lose weight, you need to be in caloric deficit. But really, for either one of those, you don't want to do too much too soon. So in general, the rule of thumb is 250 to 500 calorie surplus or deficit to where you're not absolutely stuffing yourself like Thanksgiving Day, or you're not starving yourself less than, a little bit of morsel, which could cause you to actually gain weight, believe it or not, if you try to starve yourself, because your body's going to go into more protection mode and try to hold on to things because it doesn't know when it's going to eat again. Right. But the biggest thing with all that, you want to track the macros, but you also, first and foremost, right, take things in small bites at a time. Don't feel like you need to overhaul your entire diet unless it's just really terrible and you're like, hey, we need to eat 3 meals a day. Okay, great. If you start there, a lot of people have seen success just from that, just some simple tweaks. And it doesn't have to be, this crazy meal prep routine or having all these fancy organic foods, things like that. It really just takes something small, something simple, like not skipping a meal, or hey, let's eat less processed foods. Something as simple as that can really go a long way too. Um, and another big one that I always go to, let's say we get past that step of tracking your macros, really want to aim for those grams of protein, right? So ideally, if you're not in a good caloric surplus or you're not tracking that, a good general rule of thumb is like, hey, let's shoot for 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight that you want to weigh. So if you weigh 150 and you're trying to get to 180, at least minimum try to get 180 grams of protein. If you can get more than that, awesome. That's going to help you, with protein synthesis. Any proteins that have leucine in it is a great BCAA that helps with building muscle. So I think, like your turkeys, your beefs, things like that, um, are going to go a long way to help you build that muscle and lean muscle mass and not just adding on fat as well. Obviously, you can't really control only adding muscle or only, adding a certain amount of things and reducing fat. But the more lean foods you eat, the more chance you are of probably getting more lean muscle mass. You will add a little bit of fat mass there, but that's perfectly normal. But if you are in that surplus and you're eating a lot more carbs and fats, that could also be a problem if it's, again, more than what you're used to, because then your body is just going to start storing it. And that's where you can kind of get into that really bad, uh, you know, area of dirty bulking, right? I've done that in the past. Don't recommend it. Definitely doesn't help you feel good at the end of the day. And you, again, feel like you're stuffing yourself all the time. Um, So just something to kind of be aware of there is keep those macros in check. Make sure it's really consistency. The meal timing, there's research that agrees and disagrees with it. I think it's all on personal preference and what's best for your schedule. So if you get up in the morning and you're like, hey, I love crushing a shake or something simple, awesome. If you don't eat anything in the morning, or you get to a point where you're like, hey, I'm just going to stuff my face at the end of the day, that could probably be a problem, right? I saw a interaction the other day on X where a nutritionist and a coach were kind of going at it. It was like, hey, if you're not getting, 50 grams of protein minimum before lunchtime, odds are you're probably not going to meet that calorie goal by the end of the day. So I thought that was kind of a neat little, hack. Just like, hey, try to get 50 grams of protein before lunch or before you eat lunch. Because then if you go 50 to then 50 at lunch and then 50 roughly at dinner, maybe a little bit more, right? That's 150 plus grams of protein right there, which can help out a lot of people, right? Whether you're trying to add or lose weight, I think that's a good, awesome goal to kind of go with. Um, Obviously, paired with this, I'm going on about nutrition, but you got to make sure that you're putting in the work and exercise and training as well. So if you're not doing those and you are eating more, doesn't always mean that you're going to gain muscle, right? So you got to make sure that you're doing the right things in order to prepare for that, but not only the training portion, also the recovery side, right? Managing your sleep, 7 to 9 hours roughly for athletes is that good general rule of thumb. If you're not getting enough sleep, if you're staying up super late, playing Fortnite or whatever it might be, or scrolling on your phone, enter any vice that you want to do right there, right? Or binge watching shows. We're all guilty of it, let's be honest. But if you do that all the time and consistently and it starts to bleed into your sleep schedule, you probably got to put a limitation there on that, right? Something as simple as saying, hey, just one show and done, be done by 10 p.m. or 9 p.m., whatever works best for your schedule to make sure that you're getting some time away from the screen an hour before bed, and then you go right into it and you're ready to rock and roll for the next day. But yeah, I think that those are really good things that I just wanted to share with you guys, because I know a lot of those questions do come across my plate of, hey, I'm getting to this certain point. But if you're not tracking something, whether that's nutrition, whether that's adding velocity, throwing velocity, exit velocity, whatever, and you have no idea where you're at, it's hard for us to find out what you need to do next because we don't really know where you are now. So that's where the consistency and constantly tracking your progress. And again, you don't have to get on the scale every single day. I think, some people, especially mentally, may not be the best thing because that is going to flux up and down just from life in general, whether it's sweating out a lot or if you weigh yourself at different times of day, it's going to flux based on the type of foods you eat and what's more satiating, right? But that's going to be a big thing of what you're trying to improve. You have to measure it. I feel like a broken record. I've been saying that a lot for a lot of things, especially in the role of the performance side of things too, measuring what matters. There's a podcast episode on that as well. But if you guys are really trying to get into this, feel free to hit me up. Give me some more questions. We can get into the nitty gritty or details on this as well. But um, one thing else right before I go, if you are trying to get on the topic of supplements or you're trying to mention, hey, I've taken this or I've taken this, I think they're great. But again, don't misplace those supplements for the actual real nutrient dense food macros themselves, right? So if you have a protein shake, if you're struggling to get all the protein in and you have that, it's a great addition to supplement what you should already be eating, not trying to replace those, right? So without further ado, that's all I got for you guys today for this episode, and stay in the zone.